Hi, welcome to the H4RL Career Podcast. I'm Jill.
And I'm Dave.
And today we're going to talk about why you may not want your dream job. So that might sound surprising. You might not really think we know what we're talking about.
I think you're kind of crazy myself. She didn't run this past me, guys. She's just going rogue.
Hey, no, we do have some really good reasons for saying that, and we're gonna share those with you. If you hear what we have to say and you're still like, nope, I want my dream job, I'm set, awesome, go for it. But at least you can go for it knowing that you really have considered your other options and why it might not be a good idea.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely.
But before we get into that, I want to remind you that we really need you to like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and tell people about our podcast. That's really helpful for us. We're a new podcast, and we want to get it out there. And so please do what you can to help us share it.
We'd really appreciate that. So
yeah. And then also, if you find this helpful today and you're starting to think, okay, maybe I don't want to go for my dream career, what career do I do then?
Right, exactly.
I want to remind you also that we have a whole career course. Lots of helpful resources for you at h4rl.com. And there is a free trial. So you can go in and get started for free. And we walk you through the whole process of figuring out who you are and what different jobs are and which one would be right for you. So make sure you go check that out. So Dave, do you want to talk more about what I mean when I say you may not want your dream job?
Well, I personally want my dream job, but I don't know what she's talking about. Actually, no, we're joking about this. So what we're talking about in this is the dream job versus the dream career, all right? So you might want to go into a certain type of field, say, an engineer or something like that, but it's all about really finding that right fit from a company standpoint. Honestly, is kind of what we're talking about. And you need to also understand, like, different careers will have different expectations. For example, like, if you go everybody wants to be a doctor or a lawyer because they have a lot of prestige.
Well, not everybody.
Well,
Many people.
A lot of people want to become doctors and lawyers. You're right. And they have a lot of prestige with them. They make good money. So why wouldn't you want to do that? Well, a lot of people that go into that, not everybody, mind you, but a lot of people who go into that want the prestige. They want that accolades. They want to be, that respect part of it. Same thing with like CEOs and corporate, people who run businesses. But in order to do those type of jobs, you usually work a lot more hours than the typical person. You have a lot more education that typically comes with those type of jobs. And actually, a lot of times there's a lot of networking and, how do I say this nicely? Smoozing the people above you is a good way to say that. So that you can work your way up and so that you get your promotions to get in those positions that you want to. And so those people aren't necessarily, I would say, in their dream jobs. Some are. Some absolutely
Some people love it. And all those parts of it are okay with them.
And we know people who are doctors who do it because they want to help people, not necessarily for these other aspects. But a lot of people in those areas, you go talk to any mini nurses and they'll tell you that a lot of doctors, they tend to be a bit, they have some egos. It doesn't say that. But if you ask the nurses, that's what they'll say because we have talked to nurses.
Well, and I think that all those reasons may be reasons that it may not be a dream job for someone who is going into it because they want to help people.
Exactly.
Those parts might be discouraging to them.
There's a lot of politics. But so we're not going to focus on those particular jobs. So we're going to talk about generally other types of jobs, all right? So we hear a lot from, we're talking to teens. Hey, I want to work in video games. I want to design video games. I want to test video games.
Popular.
It's very popular. Or sports. We hear a lot about sports. Tons of sports. I want to go play. Or if they can't play, they want to do something involved with coaching. Or they want to do something involved with, working for teams that do, professional teams. And then we also hear people who want to travel because that sounds awesome as well. And there's some other things. And work with animals. These are some of the top ones we hear about as far as people in their dream jobs, right? So then, let's talk about some of these, all right? So the thing about video games, by the way, is what people don't realize is if you're testing out video games, you actually are probably going to be rerunning the same, level over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Doesn't it sound great?
All the time because you're looking for bugs. You're trying every little aspect out and trying to figure out where's the glitches at, where things don't work right? So it's not like you get to play the game and just give them your feedback. It
gets tedious.
Very tedious and kind of boring. If you work for sports teams, guess what? A lot of the people who work for sports teams are still in their offices writing emails in a cube all day.
Just doing regular office work.
Just doing regular office work. You're still doing like billing and accounting, and you're just talking to Ted about, the financial aspect about what's going on with the company. It's not like you're out there calling the plays. And even the coaches have a lot of the financial side of things they have to deal with as well. So they don't realize it's still a job. Mm-hmm. It really is still a job. And the thing that we find out, or even you have a good example, like people who might want to work with animals. You want to talk about the book you read about Jeff Corwin?
Oh, yeah. So Jeff Corwin, I don't know if you've seen him. He used to be on television. I don't know if he still is or not.
I think he does some stuff on Saturday mornings with like
so he gets to travel around the world and show you animals on TV, right?
A lot of like ocean animals now. So.
Yeah, it's really, if you love animals and you think of a dream job, that's kind of the epitome of that, right? Like, let me just go find cool animals and tell you about them and handle them and
travel the world, see some exotic places.
What could be better?
It sounds
right?
awesome.
And he kind of addresses that.
Do they have job openings? Because I wouldn't mind applying.
He kind of addresses that idea of if you get a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And even he is like, well, that's just not true, right? Because there are some days where it's hot. It's freezing. You have bug bites everywhere. Maybe you're sick and not feeling great.
Because you're in some other part of the world and you got some kind of like intestinal bug and now you're not feeling good.
Yeah, and you're out there on a boat finding these animals like, look what I've got, you know.
And you travel maybe a full day in an airplane to get there and you're working 16 hours a day trying to get these photos in a short amount of time.
It's not your schedule.
No, it's not your schedule.
Yeah.
It's not a vacation, people. It's not a vacation.
Yeah, so he's like, yes, I love what I do. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't feel like work and isn't hard sometimes. Right? So no matter what you do, if you're being paid for it, you're going to have to do it sometimes when you don't want to.
Or a lot of times when you don't want to. So that's the one thing is like, we have a saying we always say on our site. It's like, they pay you for a reason. All right? So and that's actually a good point that we're going to kind of lead into our next point about these dream jobs. If it's your dream job, chances are it's a lot of other people's dream jobs as well. A lot of people want to go work in video games. A lot of people want to go work for sports at places. Lots of people want to travel or work with animals. Mm-hmm. It sounds fun. It sounds interesting. I get it. But the thing there is that a lot of other people want to do it, then the company actually doesn't necessarily have to pay you as much, believe it or not, because they don't have to. Other people will do it for much less.
Right.
And also, that also means that they can kind of abuse you. And what I mean by that, I don't talk about they're getting whips out and not beating you like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm meaning that they can kind of almost make it mandatory that you work a lot more than your 40 hours a week. It's kind of like you're doing it for the good of the company. Or for even some places are like a children's hospital. We know people who like work at a children's hospital or at a zoo, by the way. Right. They have this greater mission. It's for the animals. It's for the children, which is great, by the way. They do have real legit missions. But they expect you to give a lot more of your time and effort and go above and beyond, not paid, to meet that mission. Right. So that's one thing you got to think about before you kind of go off and have this idealistic idea. It's not like they don't respect you, your time, and you as a person. Right.
It really, what it does is it makes you less valuable.
Yes, it does.
And so the greater the mission of the place you work,
or the more people that want to work there,
the less your value. And for sure, the more people there are that want your job, that are willing to do your job, working more hours, getting paid less, all those things, the less valuable you are as an employee.
I saw this guy on YouTube who does a lot of finance stuff. He kind of compared the salaries between GM and Ford, some car companies, more standard ones that people don't really typically dream about working for, and Tesla, which is the big hot commodity that everybody wants to go work for, right? And the average salaries of the employees for GM and Ford were significantly higher by like $20,000. Like Tesla paid their people average like $56,000. And the other two were up in like $64,000 to $77,000 on average. So that's spread out in the very large companies, all of them. And guess what? Tesla's actually located out in California, where it's a lot more expensive. Mm-hmm. Whereas the other two are located.
Lower salary is actually even lower.
Where the other ones are located more actually in the Midwest, which is actually cheaper to live. So it's actually not nearly the same type of living standards.
Right.
So just realize that there's actually real stats out there. Now, obviously, you got some outstanders like the big tech companies like Google and Apple are a little bit different in this case, but we actually know people who worked for some of these big tech companies, and they say they pay you that for a reason, by the way. Mm-hmm. And they give you all these perks for a reason, because they want you to be there all the time, working all the time, and they kind of expect that. They don't really respect your work-life balance too much.
That's right. And that goes along with what I was about to say, is when we say that they may not value you as much, we're not talking just about salary. Salary is one place where you'll see that, but it's also, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it if you're not valued at work, and if they're just like, well, we'll just get somebody else if you don't want to do it. You really feel that, and it can make it pretty unpleasant.
So this can get kind of like okay, this is kind of depressing. Then where do I want to work? Well, you kind of actually want to work sometimes at these companies that aren't as big and exciting, right? More of some people call them boring. There's a more traditional type of career.
Just a regular old job.
And the reason why that is, by the way, is they will typically pay you more a lot of times, but also everybody else there working there kind of has the same feel, like this is just a job. You have a life outside of work. Your job is to earn money, right? Your job is to earn money, and they all are in the same boat as you.
And those companies are going to do well when their employees are happy and want to work hard.
And the most important thing, by the way, is your manager. By the way, I've worked at a company. I've had not a lot. I've had quite a few managers, and I've had good managers and bad managers. And I'll tell you this 100%. The people you work with and the managers you work for will make the biggest difference in your career, everyday life. I've worked with some really cool, interesting, exciting stuff that a lot of other people would like to work for. I work for a company that a lot of people tend to work for, and they definitely have that mission point of it. Like, you do this for the mission of the company.
A lot of people want to work for you.
A lot of people want to work for this company and have a mission part of it. But also, it's the people. I really find that the people I interact with on a day-to-day basis make the biggest difference. And you'll find that, and most people will tell you that, as well as your managers. Does your manager manage up, which means are they more focused on making themselves look good in front of their managers, right? Or do they manage down, which means they're more interested in making sure that the day-to-day life and of their employees are good. And I've had managers that do both, and you definitely want the latter. You want the managers who really do care for you as an employee, and who really wants to make sure that they may not be able to meet all your concerns, so you're never going to get everything you're going to get you want, but they are at least concerned about it, and they will try. They'll go to bat for you up to management. They aren't just more worried about themselves. All right?
And this is true pretty much anywhere you work.
Everywhere you work.
That your manager and the people you work with make such a difference.
So that's one thing, is like if you work for these other companies that are bigger, and more fancy, a lot of them have people who are trying to move up the chain as well, because they kind of draw those type of people. They want to move up, and they want to be, so they're more concerned about how they look versus how you look. And plus, a lot of them are kind of newer. A lot of them tend to have newer managers because they move up the chain. So you don't have as well established career managers. And I'll tell you what.
Without much experience, without much training.
Yes, exactly. And that makes a huge difference. Your managers really make some of the biggest difference in your career, in the people you work with. Because if you don't get along with the people you work with, I don't care how exciting the work is, you're going to hate it. All right? You're going to hate what you do, because every job has people. You got to be able to work well with them. So that's part of the reality of it. That's also, by the way, you always see all these sitcoms out there that have all these kind of like, the funny parts are always how people interact with their employees and with their bosses, because guess what? That's basically what your career is. Yeah. So
it's just sort of an aside what they do.
Right.
But the relationships there matter.
So there's a lot of things that go into your career, by the way. Just picking what you want to do, that goes into your interests and part of your strengths and stuff like that. But kind of what we're talking about here is what you call work values. What do you want out of a job? Now, some careers absolutely have certain types of work values that are kind of like specific and kind of niche to those type of careers. But a lot of these work values are broad across most careers. And you may not know what we're talking about, but if you come to our site, if you come to our career course, we talk about this. We talk about and help you actually have some assessments and figure out what is important to you out of a job.
Right, because you might have the same career, the same job at the same place, and somebody might say, it's awful working here. I just hate it. And the person next to them is like, oh, I think it's great.
Oh, right.
And you're like, what in the world? How can this be? And what it is those people have very different work values. So the things that really matter to them that make this feel like this is a great job are different
Mhm.
than the things that matter for that other person and make it feel like a good job. So maybe the work values for the one person are met at that place, but the other person's are not.
I'll give you one example of this. So, working from home. Lots of us have just recently had to work from home because of the whole pandemic.
That's a good example.
Some people love it. I love it. Quite a few people love the flexibility of working from home and not having to make that commute in and out of work. But actually, there was a recent survey of a lot of younger Gen Zers and stuff like that. They actually want to go into work. And the reason why is a lot of them actually, that's where they get their social connection. So they don't actually have families at home that they're staying with like I do. They actually want to go into work because that's where they get their social and their interactions. Otherwise, they're at home by themselves all the time.
And there are also people that are more our age and feel like they're distracted at home. And
they're absolutely good point,
They
Joe.
appreciate that work environment.
And
so
that's just different.
It's a personal thing.
So what if you really liked working from home, but the company you work for didn't offer that at all? You would feel somewhat trapped in some ways. You wouldn't like that as much.
So it's important to consider these things when you're choosing a career because, like Dave said, certain careers align much better with certain work values and don't align very well with others. So in some cases, you can pick this company's a better fit than this one in the same career. But sometimes when you make that career choice, these are important things to know.
For example, if you want to work from home, you can get a little bit of telemedicine as a nurse or a doctor, but a lot of that's going to be hands-on. You're going to be seeing people in person, actually doing the care on people. So it'll be kind of hard to work from home, or at least your options will be more limited than, say, maybe a software programmer.
Right. I was actually just talking to a friend who's a nurse practitioner because she was wishing she could work from home and have more flexibility. And she was explaining why there's very few areas of medicine where that really works well.
Exactly. So that's what we're trying to talk about. So again, it might sound kind of confusing and a little overwhelming, but we've laid this all out for you guys, all right? So we have it on our course, and you can come in and we'll walk you through these steps and help you evaluate this and help you understand what careers, we actually, by the way, help map careers to work values.
Right.
That's part of our database, by the way. You can figure out what work values as well as what your interests are, and we help figure out what careers with salaries that might meet your needs.
Right. So not only do we walk through and explain these work values and what they are,
and help you evaluate what yours are.
Yeah. We have an assessment online that you can go through and click the questions, and it tells you which of your work values are strongest. And then, like Dave said, in our database where we have hundreds of careers, we actually list the work values. So you can go in there and search by those and see which jobs are highest and lowest in your most important work values.
Absolutely.
It's really helpful.
So anyway, this is what we're just trying to tell you. We're not telling you can't work for these awesome, exciting companies. Just beware that it may not be everything you think it's going to be, all right? So there might be some things you start to realize, isn't quite as interesting or thoughtful. Oh, by the way, I want to say a lot of these top companies have some of the highest turnovers because of these reasons. So
because people aren't happy, it turns out.
Don't rule out some of the companies that you may not have heard of before or may not be quite as interesting or cutting edge as you think they are. They actually might provide a pretty interesting and at least happy career, because then you can work and then take your time off and play your video games or watch the sports or earn that money and go travel. So
right. And something, Dave, that I don't think we've really talked about yet in this podcast, I know we've said it many times, but why you might not want your hobby as your job.
Oh, yeah.
So we said you might not want your dream job. For a lot of people, their dream job means taking their hobby and doing that as a career, which just sounds like,
Yeah, they say, like, if you love your job, then you never work a day in your life. And there's some truth and maybe not some truth in that as well.
We talked about that with Jeff Corwin, but I don't think we really went down the hobby road. So do you want to do that real quick?
Well, the hobby road is like if you do what your hobby is every single day of your life, you're going to end up having to do it when you don't want to do it. And it's going to kind of ruin it for you as a hobby. Because you don't really want to do that.
So now you don't have that thing that you used to do to relax because you've been forced to do it all the time.
Right. When you don't want to do it.
And in ways you might not even like doing it.
Absolutely.
So there's just a quick caution on you may not want your hobby to become your job, because then your hobby becomes your job, not your hobby.
Anything you do over and over and over and over again is probably going to become tiring and repetitive and a little bit, you want to do something else when you get home. Is this what's going to happen, right? You don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So yeah. Anyway, good point, Joe. So with that, we'll, I think, kind of covered most everything we wanted to cover.
I think so. So do you see why we're saying now that you may not want your dream job?
Yeah, maybe.
It's at least something to take a second look at and make sure you've really thought it through.
Exactly. So
and you want to know what those work values are. So again, free trial at h4rl.com. Come check it out.
Not only that, but please, if you found this interesting, informative, or at least a little bit shocking, please share it with people. Please give us the 5
It's a little bit shocking.
maybe shocking. 5 stars, thumbs up, subscribe, all those good things. Please help other people hear about us, tell people about us. We're trying to get this out there.
Absolutely.
And if you have any questions, by the way, please put them in the comments below or contact us we have a contact page at h4rl.com.
Yeah.
And
let us know what else you want to hear about,
yeah.
too.
Or if you have differing opinions, we'd love to hear that too. So
thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.